My full-time gig is I am a truck driver for the Meijer grocery store chain. I've held a commercial driver's license for 27 years, 13 of those with Meijer. In 27 years, I have driven in 45 states, 4 Canadian provinces. I logged 1.6 million miles before I jackknifed my first truck. People think of Meijer as just a supermarket. Well, Meijer has its own, what they call, private fleet truck driving company. We have almost 250 tractors, almost 400 drivers. We run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The only day we take off is Christmas. The fleet runs 29 million miles a year to bring you your groceries and your general merchandise. 29 million. It's no wonder I'm tired after a week at work. That's all. We run a lot of miles. Before I even thought about going to a truck driving school and becoming a truck driver, there's a question that I had in the back of my mind that maybe you have had the same question. Why do they call it a semi? The first time I ever heard that word, I was just a little guy, probably first or second grade. And whenever the teacher wanted to read to us children or demonstrate how something worked, she would sit in a chair in the middle of the floor and have us children sit around her in a semi-circle or a half a circle. Okay, so why are they calling this a half a truck? I can see the whole thing. Well, this term actually only refers to the trailer. In the early part of this country development, most trailers looked suspiciously like the modern day farm wagon. It had a rigid axle at the back of the trailer to hold the back half of the trailer up and support half of the cargo weight. And then it also had an axle in the front of the trailer with a pivot point in the middle, and that's how you could steer the darn thing. At first, to move this was actually connected to actual beast horse power. As technology advanced, beast horsepower was replaced by mechanical horsepower, or a thing we call today a truck. And the truck was connected to the drawbar on the front of the wagon. So a full wagon, a full trailer is like a prairie schooner or a stagecoach or a hay wagon. Has this front steerable axle. In the early days, this was okay. The prescribed method of how you drove this trailer is you made this large balloon-shaped U-turn, and you pulled up alongside of the building and loaded and unloaded the trailer from the side. As the cities got bigger, and the alleys got smaller, you did not have the room to make this big swing around maneuver. You had to start from Main Street and then back down the alley to the dock and load and unload the trailer from the rear. This was a very difficult maneuver to master because you had to control 2 pivot points. The pivot point of that front axle swinging back and forth, and the pivot point of the hitch mechanism holding it to your power. And you're trying to back this thing, and the 2 pivot points are actually trying to swing in opposite directions as you're trying to do. It's like trying to push a rope. Had to be a better idea. Guy by the name of Alexander Whitten gets this crazy idea in his head. He says, hey, here you got your truck, and here you got your trailer. What if we were to get rid of that front axle on that trailer and put the front half of the trailer onto the back half of the truck? Now we only have one pivot point to deal with. This is way easier to drive. Alexander Whitten is credited in 1914 to come up with the very first semi-trailer, or a trailer that only has half of the axles required to hold itself up without any other piece of equipment being hooked to it. And it is way easier to back up. They taught me how to do it. And I can even teach you how to do it. Scouts are getting ready to be, you're about that age where you're going to go to driver's ed very soon. At driver's ed, they are going to teach you to put two hands on the steering wheel. Back when I went to driving school, your hands were at 10 and 2 o'clock on an analog clock. And you pull with gravity one way or another to be able to steer. I'm told nowadays they are teaching people in driver's ed to hold the steering wheel down low at the 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock position. The reason they're doing that is because modern cars have that airbag in the middle of the steering wheel for the driver. If you've got your hands up here at 10 and 2 and you crash, the airbag goes off, you punch yourself right in the eye and could damage and possibly lose your eyesight. They are now teaching folks to go down to 4 and 8. When you crash, the airbag goes off, you just punch yourself in the stomach. And that's a lot safer, and you'll recover from the accident better. But they're going to teach you two hands on the steering wheel. The day after you get your driver's license, you're going to forget all about two hands on the steering wheel. And what you're going to do is you're going to put one hand on the steering wheel at the top of the steering wheel at the 12 o'clock position. And here you are driving in the hood, or you fly in your fly hoop, do one hand on top of the steering wheel, and your other hand eating your McDonald's French fries, tuning the radio, God forbid, texting on your phone. All Meijer private fleet truck drivers use Bluetooth hands-free telephone device. So should you. And if I remember correctly here, about 2 months ago, Michigan actually did pass a law that says while you are driving, you cannot be holding or bracing a phone in your hand, in your arm, or against your shoulder. You're not supposed to, nobody's supposed to be doing it anymore. So you're going to drive going forward in your car at the 12 o'clock position with one hand on the steering wheel. And backing a trailer. Put one hand at the bottom of the steering wheel at the 6 o'clock position. Whichever which way you want the rear of the trailer to go, you move the bottom of the steering wheel a little bit and start walking it back, and the trailer is going to turn that direction. It's that easy. The top of the steering wheel is for driving. The bottom of the steering wheel is for backing up. But that's where the difference is a semi-trailer has half of the axles required to hold itself up without any other piece of equipment being hooked to it. A full trailer has that front axle still attached to it, that it doesn't need something else to hold itself up. That's where the calling it a semi comes from. The entire piece of equipment is actually a semi-truck trailer combination vehicle. It's just easier to say, hey, there goes a semi. Early development of this country The preferred fuel at the time was kerosene. Everything ran off kerosene. If you're in your bedroom upstairs, middle of the night, Mother Nature calls. You had to get out of bed upstairs in the house, had to go down the stairs of the house, and through the house to the house behind the house, and the way you led your way was with a kerosene light. The first street lights were kerosene. Guy by the name of a lamplighter, he's got a match on a really long stick, and he comes around during sunset and turns on all of the lights on Main Street. They ran off kerosene. The first headlights on the very first automobiles were kerosene lights, but had a polished piece of metal behind them to project all the light forward. Even farm tractors ran off kerosene. This is a picture of a Romley oil pull farm tractor. They don't make these anymore. Right up here on the exhaust stack in yellow lettering, it says guaranteed to burn kerosene under any load. Even farm tractors ran off kerosene. Well, where does kerosene come from? Either you can slaughter a whale, cook down its blubber, and you get a type of kerosene. We don't do that so much in this country anymore. Or you can drill for oil out of the ground. Drill, baby, drill. And you can drill oil, and you refine it, and refine it, and you get kerosene, and then you get this kind of this oily, liquidy byproduct that back in the day, we didn't take care of the earth as well as we do now. We took that byproduct, we just poured it on the ground. If there was a limestone quarry nearby that was done, we'd pour it in there. Sometimes we take the time to pour it back down the oil rig and put it back in. Yeah. There was this German who was familiar with the petroleum industry and was somewhat of a tinkerer, somewhat of an inventor. Well, he took some of that kerosene byproduct home and was going to experiment with it, see if he could find a use for this. He finds out that if you hold a match directly to this kerosene byproduct, it will light. Pull the match away, it will stop burning. It is burnable, but you got to put it under compression. You got to keep it contained to keep feeding it fuel. So he builds a homemade one-cylinder engine, and he doesn't know how much compression this has to have to make this fire. So he makes one prototype test engine, spins the flywheel, starts putting fuel in it, and it will fire, but it just won't keep going. There's not enough pressure in that cylinder to make it fire. Okay, that's too small. We're going to make one even bigger. We don't know exactly what the compression ratio is, and I'll tell you why in a minute. He builds this large compression engine, starts putting fuel in it. It works. It works too good. There is so much pressure in there that when it starts getting to going, the engine explodes. That's why we don't know what the compression ratio is, because there's no evidence left over. It exploded, seriously injuring this inventor, almost killing him. He's not going to be deterred. While he's laying in the hospital, recovering from his wounds, he goes, all right, this engine's too small. This one's too dangerous. When I get home, I'm going to make one about this size. Kind of like, sounds like the Goldilocks and the Three Bears story, right? He gets home, builds another engine, runs off approximately a 30-to-1 compression ratio. spins the flywheel, starts putting this kerosene byproduct in there, and it fires, and it keeps going. As long as he keeps putting fuel in it, he has found a reason, a use for all the stuff we're throwing away. He becomes the first person in the world to invent the compression engine. Variations of his engines are used around the world today. Train locomotives, World War II submarines, and backup power generators. This world-famous inventor's name is Rudolf Dyson. And I know what you're thinking right now. Fredo, that dude is not that famous. Because I would remember a silly-sounding name like that. To know who I'm talking about, you have to Anglo-Saxonize, Americanize his name. Rudolf Dyson, translated into English, is Rudolf Diesel, the guy who invented the diesel engine. Guten Tag, Herr und Frau. Wie geht es Ihnen? Sprechen Sie Deutsch?
Ja.
Ah?
Ja.
Nein? Ja? Ah, that's wonderful. Möchten Sie etwas Wasser trinken? For the rest of you, don't speak German, what you are looking at, this is a 300 Pfennig, or the direct word-for-word translation from Germany. This is a 300 penny, $3. This is a $3 postage stamp issued by the Deutsches Bundespost, the German post office, featuring a portrait of their countryman, Rudolf Diesel. That's what he looked like. The difference between a gasoline engine and a diesel engine. Here's a piston that would normally be inside of an engine cylinder. When the piston is at the very bottom of a gasoline engine, at the top there are two valves that open. Fuel and air introduced into the cylinder are closed. Piston comes up, and at the top, the gasoline has to be ignited by a very small fire, a spark of a fire. So a gasoline engine has a spark plug in it. Piston comes up, spark ignites the fuel. Gasoline does not burn. Gasoline explodes and is very dangerous. You gotta be really careful with it, folks. As this fuel and air mixture expands, there is more pressure in the cylinder at the top than there is at the bottom. And as the gases expand, it pushes the piston back down to the bottom of the cylinder. There's exhaust ports that open at the very top of the cylinder. When this comes back up, it pushes all the exhaust gases out of the cylinder and restarts the cycle again. Gasoline engines are easy to produce. We've got down to almost a cookie cutter type of thing. We can make thousands and thousands and thousands of them. But they do have a lot more moving parts. They do require a lot more maintenance. You got to tune them up. Probably you get oil change every 5,000 miles, and you have to do a tune-up, or you have to check the plugs and the wires. There's a lot of maintenance to them, but they're so common that there are parts stores everywhere that will sell you parts to them. The other bad thing about a gasoline engine is what we call heat cycles. When you get up in the morning, you're going to turn that engine on to leave your home. The worst thing you can do to an internal combustion engine is start it. When you start it, all the oil is down in the pan in the bottom of the engine, and it's going to take a second, 2.5 seconds for that oil to be pumped up into the top of the engine and start lubricating the moving parts. Well, every time you turn your engine on, it's running without lubricant. So you're going to turn it on at home, and you're going to go to work, shut it off. Then you're going to turn it on again at your lunch and run through the McDonald's drive-through, and then you're going to shut it off and then pick up your dry cleaning. Then you're going to turn it on again and go back to work, shut it off. Then you're going to turn it on again and run to Meijer to go get your groceries out and shut it off. Then you're going to turn it on again, and all those heat cycles cause wear because every time you're starting it, there's no oil in the top of the engine. They have a life expectancy of somewhere around 200,000, where eventually the parts inside there are so worn out from being started so many times without lubrication that the engine is shot, and we mass produce these things where they're fairly inexpensive, and you just replace the whole engine. Besides, when you have 200,000 miles on your vehicle here in the state of Michigan, we use so much salt on the roads in the winter, the rest of the car is about gone by that time anyways. This is time to get another car. In a diesel engine, the piston is at the bottom of the cylinder. Air and fuel valves open at the top, put that mixture into the cylinder, and the valves close. This piston starts coming up. This is about a 30-to-1 compression ratio. As it starts to squeeze those fuel molecules inside of here, they're looking for a place to hide, and they start moving around here pretty quick. And they're trying to get away from this piston. And the faster the molecules move, and the further that there is so much friction going on inside of here with the fuel molecules that eventually it ignites and catches fire. Just from heat and compression of all that friction, of all that pressure going on in here. The fuel ignites, the gases expand. Now there's more pressure up here in the top of the cylinder than at the bottom, and it will push the cylinder back down to repeat the process. With all that pressure that's going on inside of that block of that diesel engine, they have to be built very, very heavy duty, or there's going to be so much pressure the engine block's going to explode. Thick walls, thick blocks. Part of the diesel is actually a lubricant to make things work inside of the engine. And instead of the heat cycles you have with a car engine, truck drivers will get to their home terminal, turn on that engine, and then they're going to run 11 hours that day to wherever they're going, and then they're going to leave the truck running for either heat or air conditioning, and then they're going to go to their next place the next morning, and while they're and they keep the truck idling, well, that keeps the coolant and the oil circulating. Now, they don't have the heat cycles. It just runs, and that engine will run for 14, 16 days at a time, and it does not go through the heat cycles. With proper care and feeding of a diesel engine, they will easily go 1 million miles. At that time, you can do what is called an in-frame rebuild. You don't have to take the engine out of the truck. You can start tearing apart from the top end and replace the pistons, the rings, the harmonic dampener, all the replacement parts, and you can get another 500,000 miles out of that same engine. Yes, they are more expensive to produce, but have far less moving parts, way more torque than a gasoline engine could ever turn, and they run a long, long, long time. One of the requirements is different modes of transportation and to be able to compare them one to another. Let's say we're going to haul a load of oranges from Tampa, Florida, up here to Lansing. How would we get them up there? We have several different modes of transportation. One of them would be by barge or tugboat. The advantages of this is there is no infrastructure required. You can put as much oranges as you want on top of here as long as this is a little bit higher than the water level. A weight limit, as long as it will float, it can go. So we could come down here, Tampa, and pull this tugboat full of oranges across the Gulf of Mexico, over here to the Mississippi River. Go up the Mississippi River, up here to Chicago, come across Lake Michigan, and if it was deep enough and dredged deep enough, we could go from Grand Haven all the way to Lansing on the Grand River. No weight limit, no, it's already naturally there. God already provided it to be there. Well, this is literally the slow boat to China. It's going to take over a month to get them up here. And what's going to happen to all these oranges sitting out here in the sun and the rain and everything for over a month? Right, they're going to rot. It's not under, it is perishable produce. So this is probably not the best way to go about doing it. We can also load a railroad car, and this one happens to have a refrigerator inside of here. It is a refrigerator on the railroad. We can fill this up full of oranges and run it through the national network. Every rail car is about 2.5 trucks that are not on the highway. The national network for the railroad, starting here in Tampa, there's a line that runs to Jacksonville. There's a main hub in Atlanta. The same thing's going to happen in Louisville. The same thing's going to happen in Indianapolis. The same thing is going to happen in Detroit. That one car cannot move by itself. It isn't like that little vacuum tube at the drive-in bank. You can't send it all by itself. You got to send it with 100 other railroad cars. Then you have to sort it at every time it comes to a major terminal or major hub. Jacksonville, Atlanta, Detroit. It will stay cool, but it's going to take about 2 weeks to get up here. Another type of mode of transportation is by truck. We can carry approximately 45,000 pounds plus the weight of the actual truck is a total gross weight of 80,000 pounds. 45,000 pounds of that would be your product. Temperature controlled. It has a reefer on the front of it. I can make that run from Tampa to Lansing approximately in 3 days. If there wasn't DOT regulations and this and that says a truck driver can only drive so far, and we'll get into the rules and regulations later, I could probably chug a 6-pack of Red Bull and I could be up here in a day and a half. I could do it. It would not be safe. So this is what the interstate network looks like, and this is the route that we would take from Tampa all the way up to I-75 to Detroit, and then just hang a left here to Lansing. We could haul it that way. We're not going to haul as much as a tugboat. We're not going to haul as much as a train car, but we are going to get here a little bit faster. It'll be about 3 days. The fastest way we can do it is ship it by plane. Fill this thing up full of orange juice, and it takes off from the airport in Tampa, and it'll be up here in Lansing in about 3 hours. That'd be very fresh orange juice. The problem with this is the weight limit. You cram this thing full of oranges, it can't get off the ground. The drawback is its first part of its name. It's an airplane. It has to be able to get off the ground. If it doesn't get off the ground, all you have is a semi-truck with wings on it. So if you would do this and put orange juice in here and the limited amount that they could have, your orange juice would be about $14, $15 a gallon. So there is the amount of cargo that you can haul and the speed of what you can get, and whatever that happy medium is between the type of product you're using, that's the mode of transportation that you would use where it was economically feasible to be able to move this. There is, can anybody name a city here in Michigan that is not on water? It does not have an airport. The only way they can get things is by truck. Everybody say Gobles, Michigan. They never had an airport here. They used to have the Michigan Central Railroad ran right across here, but it is now a snowmobile trail and a bike trail in the summer. There's no railroad connection. They do not have an airport. They don't have a major water source. The only way they can get things is by truck. Requirement 2C says to talk about overseas shipping logistics. In the early days of moving things in the freight in this country, it was a labor-intensive operation. Let's say you want to haul grain from upstate New York, and you're going to sell it to folks in Europe. Well, you have to harvest the grain. Then you'd have to shovel it onto a farm wagon. The farm wagon would get to the grain elevator, and then you'd have to shovel it into the grain elevator. Then the grain elevator, you have to shovel it onto a railroad car, get it down to the Erie Canal, shovel it onto the Erie Canal barge, take it all the way down to New York City, and then you have to shovel the grain again onto an ocean-going ship. It was a lot of labor. And every time you changed mode of transportation, there was always a chance of spillage, theft, rodents, bugs getting into it. It was a really tough deal. There was a truck driver. He was from North Carolina. And he had a dedicated route that he was running from New York City down the interstate, down here, to Houston, Texas. And he was making this run back and forth all the time. One day, he has an idea. He's sitting at a dock in the harbor in New York and looks over and sees a U.S. Navy surplus Liberty ship from World War II. And it's for sale. And he's getting the idea, what if we were to convert that boat, and instead of 100 truck drivers driving this route, let's put 100 trucks on a boat and have one boat make one run to Houston. That guy's name was Malcolm McLean. He's the guy that came up with this idea. This is a World War II Navy Liberty ship that he has converted to call the Ideal X, to start shipping things by boat in bulk instead of one truck driver at a time. So instead of 100 truck drivers all going to Houston, you've only got this ship, the crew for this ship to go all the way to Houston with those hundreds of trailers. This guy is the person who started the idea of sea-land service. You see these all over the place now. It's a worldwide, just a mega company. So now what we're going to do is now we're going to float the Ideal X from New York City all the way around the tip of Florida and over here to Houston, shipping 100 containers on one shipment. Let's say you go to Meijer and you want to buy yourself one of them brand new big screen Roku TVs. Well, how did it get here to Lansing? What they did over in China is they took one of these Sealand containers and opened up the back doors and filled it full of electronics that are all heading this direction to the United States. Close and seal the doors. They put this container on this ocean-going ship. This ocean-going ship goes across the Pacific Ocean over here from China, over here to the port of Los Angeles, California. And they have these huge cranes that tower over these ships to pull these boxes off one at a time. Have you ever ordered something like from like overseas or something? They says, oh yeah, it will be here on such and such date, and that date comes and your stuff doesn't show up. And you go to the hobby shop and it's like, hey, where's my stuff? We had to back order it. Okay, let me tell you what really happened. Is this big ship here, they've got this really fancy radar and they're doing what they can to navigate around storms way out there in the wide open Pacific Ocean. Sometimes they just can't avoid it, and this happens. Your shipment that you were hoping to get this month, well, it was probably that container right there that went, whoops. That's where your stuff. That's where your stuff is, at the bottom of the ocean. So you got an ocean-going ship that they unloaded at the port of Los Angeles. They take the very same container, take it off the ship, and put it on a rail car. And they stack these two high and about 115 cars, and they make one train out of it. From Los Angeles, it goes up the BNSF Transcon all the way from LA to Chicago. When it gets to Chicago, they take the very same container off of the rail car and they made it to a highway chassis. Put it together like that. Looks suspiciously like a semi-trailer now. They make these two together, and then a truck driver from Chicago drives up here to the Meijer distribution warehouse here on Crikes Road in Lansing, and then they finally unload this container. You have one shipping container, 3 modes of transportation. You only had to load and unload this thing one time, and not shovel and shovel and shovel and shovel and shovel. This was a huge benefit of efficiency when Malcolm McLean came up with the idea of putting shipping containers on a ship and ship them all at once. Back when I started in trucking, October of 1995, communication was really poor. You saw your dispatcher at the terminal in Detroit, and she gave you a route, and you went to somewhere in Florida or Flagstaff, Arizona, and you never saw her again, and you never really talked to her again. And trucks didn't talk to each other either. The only way you could talk to another buddy is you had to leave him a Post-it note at his favorite truck stop. Hey, how you doing? I'll be back here Tuesday. How's the wife? You know, whatever. And put that up there on these bulletin boards that they had at truck stops. And you would usually put his call sign or his CB handle on there, so he'd find the one that, and it was a slow lot. You don't even know if you got the message, because if some jerk came up there and just jerked it off there or whatever. It is long lag times. In the 70s, Citizens band radio was the thing. Even civilians had these in their cars. So that improved being able to have somebody to talk to. It was limited to approximately a 5-mile radius, but at least you could talk to somebody. And if you were coming this direction, this guy coming this direction could let you know, hey, Mr. Policeman is sitting behind that billboard about a mile up the road. Or he'd say, hey, there's a big wreck. 275 is closed. Go down 20. At least you could get some communication with this. When I started in October of 1995, we did not have cell phones yet. And it was a standard thing that if you were on a multi-day run across the country, you had to stop one time during your day, get off the expressway into a truck stop, find a place to park your truck, go into the truck stop, and they had this large room that had like a cubicle. It looked like an office, and they all had inside of those payphones. You kids probably remember, if you've ever seen one of these, or it was probably in a museum. But this is how it used to be. One time during the day, you had to pull off the road into a truck stop, go into this cubicle, what they call the telephone room, wait for a telephone, call this toll-free number that was your dispatch, J.B. Hunt, Detroit, Carla. And J.B. Hunt is such a big company, they don't know you. You're not a person, you're a tracker number. J.B. Hunt, Detroit, this is Carla. 94096. Hey, how you doing? Hey, I'm in Oklahoma City, and I'm fine. I'm on schedule for an on-time delivery Tuesday. Okay, thanks. Click. Go back out to your truck, get out of the truck stop, get back onto the highway, get up to speed. That was an hour of your day, every day, shot to make a 10-second phone call. The cell phones that we all take for granted now, it was a godsend for truck drivers and traveling salesmen that you can make a call anywhere and still keep doing your job. That just changed everything in the trucking industry. You don't have to call, see how mama is, you can keep doing it, just rolling down the road. All Meijer all trucks have this little contraption on the dashboard. When we walk out and take a look, tour the truck, you're going to see something that looks like this on the dash. This is called PeopleNet. We don't do paper log books anymore. And you don't, well, some truck drivers might have 3 log books and getting real creative with drawing lines in their log books, plural. Well, now you can't do that anymore. The government says you guys are getting way too creative and trying to tell us where you're at. Well, now your electronics has a logbook in there that as soon as you turn the truck on, that knows where you are because there's a GPS signal transponder on the top of the truck. It knows where you are. So you can't say, yeah, I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina, and you're actually in Nashville. It doesn't work now because this thing tells you, no, they know exactly where you're at now. And you can't cheat because once you put on duty or drive or the truck starts moving, it puts you on drive and you start burning your drive time. You cannot get creative and run 3 logbooks and drive for 4 days. You can't do it anymore. It's actually safer because I have worked for a company or two that it says, hey, I've hit weather, I've hit traffic, I've broken down, whatever the case may be, I am going to be late for that load to deliver in Kansas City Monday morning. And I was told over the phone, if you're not in Monday morning in Kansas City, you're going to be working for somebody else. So there was a lot of this going on with trucking management is telling truck drivers, you're going to drive or you're fighting. So I actually kind of like this Because you can't cheat, you can't change it, you can't erase, you can't move it. It is what it is. And so there's not a lot of that twisting arms of truck drivers and threatening them with their jobs anymore. Also, the thing I like about this, and I cannot show you exactly how it works or what button it is, that there's an emergency transponder on this. If I have a medical emergency, stroke, heart attack, or God forbid, hijack, somebody pulls a gun on me, hey, we're good. I reach over there and I push one button on this. It sends an emergency transmission to my dispatcher here in Lansing. It comes up red and it's like an emergency email. If I don't cancel that emergency panic button in 3 minutes, they will call me. If I don't answer on this machine or my personal cell phone, they now know exactly where the truck is because it has a GPS locator on it, and the state patrol is on its way. All I got to do is push that button for help, and they know where I am. And I like that. Truck drivers are kind of independent folks, and we don't want our bosses looking right over our shoulder. What are you doing now? Are you going to get in? You're in the truck by yourself because here's your orders. Here's where you're going. Please get there on time. Let us know if you need anything. We like that independence part of it. But there now is a backstop. There is a way that I can communicate to somebody with just the press of a button. If something goes horribly wrong, they know where that truck is. When I went to truck driving school, they taught us a certain way of how to drive. And I think, 7th grade science class. Teacher was Mr. Rogers. Yes, Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. Yeah, we kidded him all the time. We wrote it hard. In 7th grade, we came to the part about understanding the solar system that we live in. And it was going to be in that class on our final exam that you had to know the names of the planets in our solar system in order. And as a 7th grader, you're like, man, how am I going to do that? And here they are. And for the first time in my life, Mr. Rogers, I heard the phrase, a mnemonic device. A silly little saying, a way that you can remember something. And it's just funny how the human brain works. The more goofier that saying is, and has nothing to do with what you're actually trying to remember, you'll sing that and remember it, and you can remember what you're trying to remember. That's the first time I've ever heard of a mnemonic device. And he taught us that the names of the planets in order has a silly little mnemonic device saying. And the first letter of each name on each planet has a mnemonic device. My very educated mother just sent us 9 puppies. What does the educational level of my female parental unit and Labrador retrievers have anything to do with the planets? Exactly. The more goofier the saying is, the easier it is for you to remember. So this is M is Mercury, starts with my, all the way out to P, which is puppies or Pluto. Wait, before. When I went to school, Pluto was still a planet. So that's how I learned it. So this is how to remember the names of the planets from the sun out to outer space in order. My very educated mother just sent us 9 puppies. When I went to truck driving school, they taught us another mnemonic device. And that was, all good kids like milk. Each one of those letters begins with something I have to remember to do as I am doing my job driving my semi-truck. All good kids like milk, just like my neighbor Ryan Leach here. And now, this is a pretty old picture. This guy went to Michigan Tech or Northern Michigan as an Eagle Scout now. He's really, but see, all that milk did him good. He's a pretty smart kid. These are the things that I have to remember as a truck driver. A, all, aim high in steering. As I'm driving, I gotta keep my head up. Don't be just looking at the hood ornament, the very front bumper of my truck. Get your head up and aim high, because when you are traveling in an 80,000-pound vehicle at 67 miles an hour, you're already there by the time you're able to apply the brakes. You have to see what's going on over a football field in front of you. Aim high in steering. You need to be looking way out. Minimum of 7 seconds. Preferably, you're scanning all the way to the horizon for potential hazards. G, good. Get the big picture. You got to keep your head up and be looking for all these potential hazards that are out here in front of you. Get the big picture of what's going on around you. The only way you can do that is you got a K. Kids, keep your eyes moving. The only way you're going to understand everything that's going around you is you got to keep your head and eyes moving around all the time. Preferably every 6 seconds, you're looking down at your gauges. Then you're looking way down there as far as you can, scanning for hazards. Looking down at your gauges again. Looking over here at your right mirror to see if anybody's trying to pass you on the right. Look down at your gauges. Look up in front. You got to keep your head and eyes moving to have situational awareness of everything that is going around behind you, in front of you, to the side, what could possibly happen in front of you. Got to keep your eyes moving. Some people do. So they get really comfortable driving their vehicle. So you're going to pull out onto the highway, and you're going to get up to speed, 55 or 70, whatever it is. You're going to get going, and you're going to hit the cruise control. All right, my autopilot. Now the engine is turning the same RPMs all the time. And nothing changes. As you're rolling down the road, the rolling resistance of the tires are making the same sound over and over. Never changes. Now, whether it's in the summer when you got the air conditioning on, or in winter when you got the defroster on, you got that fan turned up, and it's not changing. It's going to do the same thing over and over. People get into a false sense of security just staring out the window and hear those 3 hums that never change. They kind of relax a little bit, don't get their eyeballs moving. Just start staring out the window, and then they're just, hey, everything's cool. And they're just, and then all of a sudden, I know, oh, geez, where'd that guy? Oh, he just, what was that? You have a left side mirror. You have a rear view mirror behind you. You should have seen this guy coming at least a half a mile or 3/4 of a mile behind you. He should have never snuck him. What happened? You got so relaxed and so calm with nothing changing, the RPMs of the engine, the tires, the fan. It is called highway hypnosis. You were in a trance. You fell asleep with your eyes open because you never moved and just kind of gliding. And something like that will happen to you. You can be hypnotized going down the road at highway speeds. It cannot happen if you keep your eyes moving. As long as you're turning your head and adjusting your focus from close up on the dash to far down, as long as you keep moving, and you cannot be hypnotized. Keep your eyes moving. L, like. Leave yourself an out. I play a game every day, 14 hours on the road, that I'm trying to decide, and I'm actually driving these cars besides this one. I'm driving for this guy, and this guy, and the guy behind me. Where am I going to go if these guys do something crazy, the tire blows out, something happens, or a deer runs off over here, and this guy's going to slam on the brakes, or he's going to swerve over here? If somebody does something crazy, where am I going to go to escape? The escape route that you have the most control over is this spot right here in front of you. Try to leave a cushion here in the front. So if this guy doesn't check his blind spot, comes whipping over there, I'm already anticipating this guy's going to come over here. Leave yourself a spot and then play the game. Okay, if this guy takes this spot, where am I going to go if all of a sudden there's a problem? Well, if I keep my eyes moving and use this mirror right over here, is there somebody right next to me that I can move over here? Or can I go down the shoulder? But I play this mental game of where to go if there's an emergency. Truck driving is not necessarily the most physically challenged job out there. It's mentally exhausting. I come home with a headache trying to anticipate everything that's going on, all 500 miles, each and every mile of what's going on in here. But you got to leave yourself an out. If somebody does something crazy, you are already anticipating a place to go. Oh, now we come to kid. Bill, M. Make sure they see you. The human eyeballs are attracted to bright colors and to light. It's almost like an insect. They're attracted to bright colors and they go to the light. And that's why you have to wear hunter's orange when you go hunting, because that stands out. There's no mistaking that when you see that in a green and white snow woods, this big orange thing walking around, you can't miss that. Also, we are attracted to seeing bright lights. And that's why a lot of professional drivers drive with their headlights on even during the day. They're not trying to project light to see. They want your eyeballs to be attracted to that. So, oh, there's a truck. I was getting ready to pull out. And hey, because this white truck, and I don't understand why so many semi-trucks they're white. That blends in with snow and it blends in with the fog. I don't know why they all should be hunter's orange, canary yellow. They should not be white, because this truck will blend in the background when you're in a hurry and just kind of doing this. And that's why a lot of folks drive with their headlights on, so it catches your eyes, catches your attention. Anybody see that car right there? That's what I'm looking at when you don't drive with your headlights on, especially in low light conditions, fog, rain. There's a car right there. I wish he had his lights on like these guys, because that'd be so easy to pull over there and there's somebody there. That's what I see in my mirror. And how would rather out drive with headlights on, especially in light rain and fog? It really helped me out. Now we come to my favorite pet peeve. Part of make sure they see you is please use your turn signal. I will be coming up, I'm following a car, 8-second distance, and he starts slowing down. He didn't touch his brakes, he starts slowing down. Well, I know there's a cross street coming up here in about a half a mile. Now I know, because I have enough, he's going to turn. He's taking off the cruise control and just kind of rolling up to the intersection. and he's starting to crowd the center line. I was like, oh, he's putting himself in a position to make that left turn at the intersection. Well, I'm going to kind of crowd over here to the right shoulder, and so I don't have to stop and slow down. I'm just going to keep on going. And that is right when that guy goes right in front of me and hit him. I assumed what he was going to do because he wasn't communicating properly. Please use your terms. The rumors on the internet are not true. There is no shortage of turn signal fluid in this country. Please use your turn signal. The driving technique that I just shared with you is called the Smith system. Yes, it was a rookie truck driver, last name was Smith, who came up with that idea of the way of a mnemonic device to help you drive safe. In each one of your swag bags, there should be one of these keychains that has the Smith system on it. So if and when your parents give you a key to the car, put it on that key ring, and that will help you and remind you of how to drive when all good kids like milk. If this is new information to the adults in the room and says, hey, that's a pretty sharp idea, I have extra keychains. All you got to do is say you want one, and I'd be happy to give you one. Based on the numbers of deaths and injuries in the United States, where is the most dangerous place in the entire United States? It is not downtown Detroit during a drive-by shooting when a drug deal goes bad. Where is the most dangerous place in America? Ohio. I like you. Go Blues.
On the road?
Yes, the public highway system. More people are injured and killed there than any place else in America. There's two main reasons for this. One, you have a large mixture of age group drivers. You have a 15 or a 16-year-old out there for the very first time, white-knuckling the steering wheel, scared to death, just trying to keep his car in the lane, and doesn't have situational awareness of everything that is going around, just trying to survive. Then you have truck drivers that have been out there every single day of their life for 20 or 30 years that have 1, maybe 2 million miles of experience and have seen it all and have done it all. And then at the far end, you have an 87-year-old blue-haired grandma who doesn't see or hear as well as she used to and won't admit it. Also, there's a wide range of different sizes of vehicles sharing the same road. You have a motorcycle that are really hard to see that have a small turn radius and can get around, but it's really hard to see them. Then you have compact cars, pickup trucks, SUVs, all the way up to a Class 8 semi-truck trailer combination vehicle. All of these vehicles have a different turning radius, different sizes of blind spots, and different stopping distances. And all of this together with the different type of drivers and the different vehicles makes for a deadly combination. People just don't understand what it takes to maneuver a semi-truck. Anybody here a NASCAR fan? Who likes NASCAR? Have you been to Michigan International Speedway down in Brooklyn? It's a 15-minute video that I'm getting ready to show you. was filmed on Michigan International Speedway right down here in Brooklyn, Michigan. And they show, and this is set up for folks your age getting ready to drive, of how to share the road with a big truck. Justin, lights? Yeah, that's real. There we go. 75%. That is 3 out of 4 crashes that involve a truck and a car, fault of the person driving the car. They just don't understand how much stopping distance a big truck has, how big the blind spots are. If you cut a big truck off short, it's just the rules of physics currently on this planet, 80,000 pounds, no matter how badly I want to stop, I'm not going to be able to stop. I am in the biggest, heaviest vehicle allowed to legally be on the road. I am going home that night. I'm walking away from the crash. You and your little Toyota Prius, I'm not sure how it's going to end for you. The DVD that the video that you just saw, I have multiple copies of DVDs. If this is something new to you that you would like to pass on to other coworkers or other friends, please come see me during the break. I'll be happy to give you one. Okay, so right now we are going to take a little break. In the very back of the room, back there in the kitchen area, if you go see my lovely and gracious wife, Miss Jonah, there wearing the Meijer shirt, we have a class. I'm going to talk about the history and the development of highways. Early on, when vehicles became what they are today, internal combustion engine, we weren't pulling stuff around horses anymore. This is about the best that we had. Is there was a 2-track road, it was probably a cow path before that. Cow path to get in between from one point to another. Then they started building stuff in tunnel, nearly impossible. A lot of the roads in the United States look like this as well. Approximately the time around World War I, the United States says, let's see how long it's going to take us to move a military convoy across the United States. They started in Washington, D.C., and the goal to get to San Francisco, and they figured possibly 30 days. Well, you can see how much of a road that they didn't have. Didn't have the highways, didn't have truck stops, didn't have rest areas. A lot of places were just flat out washed out when the rains came. There was no maps, there was no bridges. There's no place there is no place to get replacement parts. It was a disaster. Took 57 days. On that cross-country convoy, there happened to be a West Point officer that sees what a disaster this is firsthand. Thinks, wow, if we ever get invaded by another country, we are not going to be able to move our military quick enough to get to where we need to go. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know what it is exactly what we need, but we need something better than this. Prior to World War II, the way that war was fought was called this was a Napoleonic warfare, where armies lined up on this side, armies lined up on this side out in the middle of an open field, and they said 1, 2, 3, ready, aim, fire, and started shooting at each other. Eventually, one side or the other, there's a whole lot fewer soldiers on one side than the other. It took a long time. It was a great loss of life. Eventually, one army would prevail. Well, then people started not wanting to volunteer so much to be in their national forces because they weren't protected very well. Along comes the invention of armor vehicles to protect those troops. And they're inside here. Well, the other armies did the same thing, and now we went from unprotected soldiers. Now we have a tank battle, and tanks coming at each other and shooting at each other. Eventually, the invention of vertical envelopment came along, and now it's a 3D battlefield where planes from each other's countries are trying to shoot at each other. The infantry was doing their own thing. The tanks could care less about the infantry because they were doing their own thing. And then the planes, why, they didn't care what was going on the ground. They were too busy shooting at each other. So all three of those types of military branches were doing their own thing. World War II, Germany changes the rules of warfare forever. They come up with this idea of how to combine all these arms together and work as one cohesive unit. It has a special name. Anybody here a football fan? Who likes football? Who's playing defense? Who's on defense? Anybody on defense? Awesome. Okay, so you're this guy right here. Right now it's 3rd and long for the offense. The entire offense knows it's going to be a pass play. The defense knows it's going to be a pass play. Everybody in the stadium knows it's going to be a pass play. The most important person in the pass play in football is the quarterback. This guy right here, he is going to get the ball, and he is going to try to send one of his men down range and throw it to him to achieve a first down. This guy and this guy don't want him to do that. So at the snap of the ball, these guys are going to run as hard as they can through the neutral zone and try to get this guy, try to get the quarterback and eat his lunch. What play is this called when the defense intentionally coming after the quarterback aggressively on a pass play? It's called a quarterback blitz. Yes, blitz. Blitz is a German word that means lightning fast attack. Trying to get through the O-line and get this guy before he can dish the ball off. Blitzkrieg is a German word that means lightning fast attacking warfare or combat. What used to take months or even years to achieve a military victory, now it just took hours. What they did is they combined the Bundeswehr, the Panzers, and the Luftwaffe, and they were all at the same place at the same time attacking the same part of the enemy together. So when this was going on, the Luftwaffe would come flying over the target and bomb them as hard as they could. As soon as the last plane pulls away, the Panzers, the tanks, are going to come rushing up into where the enemy has now been bombed and try to hold the high ground and trying to knock out the rest of the large structures in that area. Right behind this tank, the infantry is walking right behind them to establish and to hold the ground that has just been achieved. This baffled the good guys. We couldn't understand how is Germany moving that many men and machinery that fast from space to space to space. I mean, it has to be the same units, because if it's not, Germany don't have that many men, women, and children, let alone a fighting force that big. How are they moving all of that equipment? The tide of the war begins to turn, and the good guys start marching towards Berlin. We figured out what they did. Between the wars, they built a series of super roads. Back then, roads had one lane going this direction, one lane coming back the other direction. If you got behind a hay wagon or something that was moving real slow, good luck, because it took forever to try to pass that guy, and it really bogged down the network system. Germany comes up with this idea that we are going to put at least 2, sometimes 3 lanes all going in one direction. The same amount of lanes coming back the other direction. And instead of doing it the old-fashioned way, where there's an intersection where 2 perpendicular roads come together, we're going to separate them either by a bridge or an overpass where you don't have to stop at every single cross street. This new invention was called the Autobahn in Germany. This is how they were moving so many people and machinery from one place to another. Remember that West Point officer I told you was on the very first cross-country convoy and says, this is a disaster, we got to do something different. He's now a 5-star general in World War II, sees what Germany has built and says, that's it, that's what we need back home. Oh, if I could just figure out a way to get that done back home. Eventually, 1952, this 5-star general gets elected president of the United States. And now he's going to say, hey,